want Detroit sports talk done right? Yeah! If you want it, you got it. It's Detroit sports talk with attitude. It's the Knee Jerks with Eno and Big Al.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like at this time to introduce to you one of the finest running backs in the United States of America, and our number one pick, Barry Sanders.
Here's Isaiah. Let's see what we got. All the way up. Go!
We might not be in your car or on your transistor radio, but we're bringing you the best of Detroit sports past, present, and future. It's time for the Knee Jerks with two guys who know Detroit sports. Here's Greg Eno and Al Beaton.
It's Tuesday, February 8th, 2022, and this is a Matthew Stafford free zone. At least I'm hoping to keep it that way, but that also means it's time for the Knee Jerks Detroit Sports Talk with Eno and Big Al. I'm the Big Al of the equation, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger Al Beaton. Joining me, as always, to talk all things sports and anything else that's on his mind, and he's got a lot on his mind. That would be Greg Eno, who I hear, well, I was gone up north, had survived a snowmageddon.
That was nothing. It was another overblown thing, but, hey, I guess you're always glad that it's not as bad as they say it was. We got about 6 to 8 inches, nothing we couldn't handle. And when you're hunkered down anyway, not going anywhere, what the hell is the matter, I guess.
But the one question, though, that's taller than Bean, 6 to 8 inches.
Yeah, for sure. I am Greg Eno from my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. Thanks for joining us here on the Knee Jerks. You can follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. And of course, like I said, check me out pretty much every Monday in my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. For now, when I say for now, I may be doing something else. Who knows? Maybe Substacks or newsletters or something. I don't know what I'm going to do, but whatever.
Boy, you sound like a curmudgeon when you talk like that.
I know.
Yeah, next you're going to sound like Frank Costanza. I got a lot of issues with you people. So
whatever the kids are doing nowadays.
Yes, exactly.
But we're kind of in a weird time right now. We're recording this before the Super Bowl. Red Wings and Pistons seasons just kind of droning on.
Before the NBA trade deadline as well.
Before that, and we don't have the baseball. We don't know what's going on with that. But we're going to make at least a little bit of a show out of this. Probably.
Oh yeah, way to sell the topics there, Greg. We'll have some interesting. We'll have some hot takes. There are some interesting things to talk about, not necessarily completely related to Detroit sports, though. But we'll touch on them.
That's for sure. That's for darn sure. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, we'll do all that stuff, and before we get to any of it, of course, we're going to play a game we like to call "Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro?"
We baked you a birthday cake. If you get a tummy ache and you moan and groan and woe, don't forget we told you so. Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports, and if you can correctly guess that person within the first two clues, a case of Old Spice is on his way.
Old Spice. Oh, it's going to have the glass bottle, right? Not the plastic one that comes in now.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. So
you're going to get it. You're going to toss it to a guy who's going to fumble it. And
yeah. I wish I could whistle loud. I could do. Yeah.
I was inspired by your high karate post on Facebook.
Boy, that made me feel old, and I read that too. Oh my God! But just for a little context, I got. I get emails from Cracked.com, and one of their factoids, that's a big on factoids type site, and they're saying things that you didn't know or about movies, and in The Incredibles, there's a box of high karate cologne that shows up in the film. And Crack talked about it as if, in case you didn't know, that's a real thing. Making it sound, essentially making it like, if you're under 50 years old, you had no clue high karate existed, which is honestly probably true, because I just found it funny because high karate was heavily promoted back in the day. It was all over television. It was just the daily thing that made me feel old. So Greg's going to make me feel older by reminding me of those old Spice commercials from the mid '70s, where the hot sailor meets the hot woman because he's got his Old Spice. So, when those commercials that were on when I was like 12.
Let's see if you can do it. Let's see if you can get
God, I hope so.
Old Spice. This person, Al, made his name in the world of hockey. I will tell you that. He was born on this date in 1960. Ooh. So he's 62 years old today. This is another one of those guys that you can't imagine being 62. We were talking about Chris Chelios a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Anyways, this person was born in 1960, and he played in the National Hockey League and scored 1,200 points, which included 608 goals. So he was quite prolific, and did a turn with the Red Wings among the 5 teams he played with in the NHL, and is in the Hall of Fame.
So that means he would have played in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. All right, so... So that means he was born... what year was he born? Is it 1960?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so it's... Oh, good. And played for 5 teams. And why did all the good players play for so many damn teams?
And the Red Wings were one of them.
And the Red Wings were one of them. So... I'll just throw it out there. I think he's probably a little too young, but I'll say Luc Robitaille.
Good guess.
Yeah.
Very good guess. But no, not Luke.
Yeah, I think he might be a little young. A little bit.
Yeah, well,
how old is Steve Yzerman? 57?
You would have been Robitaille would have been younger than that. You're right.
Yeah, a little bit, not much, because he was in the same draft as Yzerman, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And Steve Yzerman's in his late 50s. He's like 56, something like that.
Right.
So I'm close. I'm in that era anyway. So. Yeah. All right. Hopefully your second question will be your second clue will be much better, so I can get the whole spice. All right. With that, we got a podcast to knock out. So why don't we start with the good news first, Greg? Because that would be I wouldn't say there's a lot of good news right now. Because there's actually not a hell of a lot to talk about in Detroit sports. So today the Detroit Tigers came off with the some breaking news. I don't know if I want to call it breaking news, but at the very least it was happy news. It's not unexpected because this was something we all saw coming. But let me bring up the exact dates and stuff here. Yeah, the Tigers announced today that they will retire Lou Whitaker's number 1 jersey during a ceremony in August. It'll be August 6th, actually, ahead of a game against the Tampa Bay Rays. Originally, the team made this announcement, Greg, to retire his jersey in 2019 with a ceremony, the whole 9 yards, but obviously the pandemic happened, and we've had to sit for a couple of years. So, Whitaker's going to get his number retired, something that should have happened. Honestly, it should have happened not long after he was originally retired, both him and Trammell, because I think at the time the Tigers had that asinine only Hall of Famers get their numbers retired rule. At least it was kind of one of those unwritten rules at the time, which they seem to have eased up on somewhat. And they broke it already anyway, Billy Horton years ago. So it was kind of silly anyway. There's a happy medium, Greg, between the numbers the Pistons retire and which they if you played for them for 6 years, you're at least in consideration. But and the Tigers seem to be, if you're not Ty Cobb, well, good luck to you. But yeah, this is long overdue. Hopefully, Whitaker will get into the Hall of Fame this year through the Veterans Committee, one of their various committees that are correcting some wrongs, like they did with Alan Trammell. So this was actually, I think, the best news we've had in Detroit sports in some time.
Well, I mean, it's the whole Whitaker Trammell thing, joined at the hip.
Yeah. And
I've not been a proponent of Lou Whitaker being in the Hall of Fame. I watched every, as you did. I watched.
So you think he's a compiler?
I don't want to dismiss him either. Yeah. I just think that when I watched him play, I watched every year of his 19 years in Detroit. And I just didn't think at the time when I was watching him play, and this goes to the same thing for Alan Trammell, by the way. This is not an anti-Whitaker thing. I just never thought I was watching Hall of Fame players. I'm sorry. I just never thought, I never really stopped to think late in their careers, boy, I got a chance to watch 2 Hall of Famers, and I knew that I felt that I was in the minority. It's obviously I'm obvious that I'm in the minority.
Yes.
The Lou Whitaker Hall of Fame thing, of course, which Trammell had been in that boat as well, and so he was elected. Now, since Trammell's been elected and Whitaker has not been, the Whitaker Hall of Fame thing has just become ad nauseum.
I think it's fait accompli at this point. I do think a Veterans Committee puts him in.
Well, then maybe, I'm not. Hey, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
I almost want it. I almost want it to happen just to shut everybody up. I'm so tired of seeing this guy should be in the Hall of Fame because he played all these years and he turned all these double plays. Which, by the way, the double play, Al, is one of the most routine plays in baseball. I mean, there's a million of them every year. It's not that hard to turn a double play. Now, there's a couple of times where, guy makes a good play in the hole and or makes a nice flip to first base and it looks pretty and they get the guy by a half a step but most double plays are your standard 4-6-3, 6-4-3, and it doesn't matter. Lou Whitaker could have played with a million shortstops. Alan Trammell could have played with a million second basemen. He would have turned the same amount of double plays. It just so happens that they turned them together, and that's supposedly the fact that they turned all these double plays together is a big deal, which I don't think it is, frankly. It's just not that big of a deal to me. Now, watching them play, they were good players, no question. There's no question about that. Whitaker in 84, Trammell in 80. I mean, they set the table. Whitaker seems like was getting on base, leading off the game every game. Trammell would do his thing, and Tigers would lead 2-0 at the end of the first inning every game in 84, it seemed like. And that trend continued into the World Series, and there's no question about that. I just don't think that he is a Hall of Famer. But now the fact that Trammell is in just makes this, this onslaught of Whitaker should be in the Hall of Fame stuff just endless. And so I just wish they would, at this point, I raise my hands and I capitulate. Put him in, shut everybody up. I'm tired of this. So this retiring the number, okay, fine, sure. You mentioned Horton. He's not in the Hall of Fame either, and that's I think he was one of the first ones, frankly, the one up at Comerica Park because of his contributions as a Detroiter and his roots and how much he loved the city and what he's done for youth in the city, and that's all well and fine. That's no problem with that. And now it does make sense, frankly, to retire Whitaker's number with Trammell because of it was longevity. I mean, they were very good players for a long. No problem with that, none whatsoever. Good for him. Good for the organization. It's. I always thought the whole Whitaker Trammell Hall of Fame thing was awkward, especially after Trammell got in. And I felt awkward for Trammell, actually. It's kind of weird when you've got two guys whose statistics are so similar, and one guy's in the Hall of Fame, one guy's not. And it's kind of awkward for the guy who's in. It's like, they picked me. I'm glad they picked me, of course. But here's my partner over here who, if you're Alan Trammell, I'm sure Trammell believes that Whitaker should be in the Hall of Fame, and that's his prerogative, of course. But Whitaker was, I don't know, Al. I don't know what you think about this. If you think that Whitaker's the argument about, hey, if he played it in New York, he'd be in. Okay, whatever. And I mean, that may be true. I mean, I don't know. But what do you think about why it was that way? That Trammell got into the Hall and Whitaker didn't. Did it have something to do with the personalities?
I think it had a lot to do. I think you have to start because Whitaker did not. I won't say he didn't get along with the media. He just didn't want to talk to them. Period.
Yeah,
and he didn't. And a lot of it had to do with his religion. I believe he's Jehovah's Witness.
He was.
So
anyway, yeah.
So I think that had a lot to do with it. Trammell, and plus Trammell stayed in the game. Manager, front office, and things like that. So his name was. He was always available to talk. He was always at spring training, things like he's with the team. So he always stayed visible. Whitaker didn't. Whitaker, once he retired, he'd show up in spring training every once in a while, and that was about it. I think it makes a lot of difference right there. Because you got to admit, the Hall of Fame in a lot of ways, be it voting or be it with the committees, it's a popularity contest. And if they like you, you're more likely to do you a good
point about your point about Trammell staying in baseball is a good one. Wasn't there a situation because I feel like I wrote about it. Wasn't there a situation several years ago where the Tigers invited Whitaker to spring training to be an instructor, and he either he didn't show up or he didn't want to show up, one of the two.
You might be. I think you're right about that. You know, I think the term for Whitaker is inscrutable. You know, the kind of, you know, I mean, this is a guy who showed up at the All-Star game without his uniform and had to play. He had to play with a jersey bought out of the concession stand.
Right.
Know, so.
Right.
But the one thing I did just look up his numbers, and I think the one thing that really drives home how good he was for how long, he averaged 4.3 WAR a year for 16 seasons. That is from his age 21 season to his age 37 season. He was a 4 WAR player. And the way analytics are today, that's absolutely jaw-dropping. But back then, it was all about what is his batting average. And he wasn't a guy who hit 300. He was a guy who walked and hit home runs from a position that didn't normally do that, and plus played plus defense. So I think if Whitaker was playing today, he'd be far more celebrated than he was back then. I think the same goes to Trammell, because Trammell isn't also more of an analytics darling than he was, a guy who's put up spectacular numbers. They are just both players who may not have been. I won't say they had high peaks, but they had extended periods of being very, very good to great players. And a lot of players had better seasons, higher peaks, but they couldn't sustain it the way those two did. But I think with Trammell stayed in the game. Whitaker didn't. Whitaker it has a prickly personality. Trammell's far more outgoing. Trammell's white. Whitaker's black. Do the math.
Yeah, well, I hope that the white-black thing.
I hope you're right, but I'm sure it plays something. It may say something into it. Yeah, or it may play into how he was looked at back then.
Yeah.
Which affected him today.
Yeah, Whitaker, when you talk about, that's why when you said at the top of the discussion, a compiler, I don't like that word. I don't think that's very fair. I think what that does is dismisses what you were just saying a few moments ago about longevity and being very good for a long period of time. You mentioned the 16 years of 4.3 WAR and so forth. And
I think there's something to being very good for a long time to being great for a shorter time.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know how you compile stats as a baseball player anyway, frankly, to be honest with you. I mean, you're going out there 150 games a year anyway. Yeah. The game itself is based on longevity. It's based on attrition. But the thing about him, and I wonder if this isn't part of it, is, and maybe this enters into the black-white discussion, is that Whitaker it seemed very natural. He made it look easy, as I'm trying to get at.
That's another point too.
He wasn't spectacular. He wasn't Ozzie Smith. He wasn't spectacular. He seems like he did it by rote, and maybe
he made it look too easy.
Right.
We're just saying,
and I think when you make things look too easy, you also give out the air, which is not fair, that you're not trying real hard.
You're being lackadaisical.
That maybe you could have done more, and that's I'm not saying that's fair, but I think that there are people who are not Detroiters, of course, who do believe Little Whitaker is a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's gotten votes. What always struck me, though, about him in the Hall of Fame wasn't so much that he didn't get in, is that he dropped out of
after one voting round.
Eligibility, if you will, so quickly.
He got under 5% of the vote, and it was ridiculous, and he dropped right out.
It was almost that. I didn't agree with that. I didn't agree with the fact that he was so disregarded and so flicked off everybody's shoulder that quickly, whereas guys like Jeff Kent and other second basemen who seem to kind of hang around and still be on the ballot and whatever. Yeah, I don't know. That bothered me about Whitaker.
Yeah, but at the very least, it's kind of funny how you say those two are joined at the hip. They're kind of joined at the hip like Tinker's to Everest to Chance, and the only reason they're in the Hall of Fame is because of that poem. So at the very least, I think if Whitaker does get in, he's actually got the numbers to back it up. So then again, there's we could do an entire show about the Hall of Fame and who deserves to be in and who is in and isn't in. And, I mean, we could go on about the guys like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens who didn't get in, or, it feels like you're rehashing the same arguments when it comes to the Hall of Fame every year. So, if Whitaker gets in, awesome. He's getting his number retired, which should have happened years ago. I also have one thing to say to Ilitch's is now retire Sergei Fedorov's number. Then I'll be happy. And you make an argument he's even more deserving. He actually won MVPs. He won multiple championships, but he made billionaires angry because he went for the money. That's really what it's all about. That's Ilitch's being pissy. You talk about billionaires being upset about a player who played the game correctly and made a shit ton of money by playing two teams against each other. Fedorov should be a hero to people. Instead of, there's a lot of Detroiters who think he's a traitor, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm sure that's how the Ilitches view him. He wasn't a. He went. He didn't stay and maybe take less. Give them a home team discount like some players do, and I don't blame him one bit. So.
Well, he also had Fedorov also had the holdout in '98. Yeah. Where he missed almost the entire year.
Yeah, so and there was the poison pill contract with Carolina, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Which today that's piddly-ass money, but back then you thought the Ilitches were going to choke on it. So, don't get me going on that stuff, Greg. Because we're going to talk about more money stuff now because it's around baseball. We got to talk about the lockout. And the player lockout continues as owners refuse to negotiate in good faith. I mean, that's pretty much obvious at this point that the MLB owners are stalling. MLB owners are dragging their feet. MLB owners are essentially sitting on their hands, waiting for the players to blink. And it really showed up this past week, because after weeks of no negotiations at all, I mean, the players made a counteroffer weeks ago, and ownership didn't make a single counteroffer at all. But all of a sudden, this week comes out that the owners have formally requested federal mediation because they're at a stalemate, federal mediation and collective bargaining sessions, and they're declaring it as a stalemate even though the owners aren't making any offers. They're not doing a damn thing. They haven't come back with any kind of reasonable counter. So, of course, MLBPA, being sane and smart, they rejected the proposal, and this is what they released. 2 months after implementing their lockout, and just 2 days after committing to players that a counter proposal would be made, the owners refused to make a counter and instead requested mediation. So, from all appearances, Greg, the players seem to be unified. I mean, they play all kinds of players, guys like Max Scherzer, and called out the owners for what bullshit this was of them. And the players seem to be very unified in their stance. They want to recreate the middle class, and they want less restrictions on younger players who are really getting by. They're getting ripped off contract-wise. And then the owners, they're just hoping that the players blinks. They keep stalling. But the thing is playing into this, though, Greg, I think, is that the owners start losing money when they start losing spring training games, when they start losing camp. Players could give a shit about training camp. They probably think it's too long as it is. They would give us 2 weeks and be ready for the damn season, because these guys work out year round. So if it's become, you have to be an idiot to not see what the owners are doing here. The owners are just dragging their feet, trying to see if the union breaks, and I don't think they will, but it's absolutely ridiculous what's going on with these negotiations, because they're not negotiations, because the ownerships aren't doing anything in good faith.
There's kind of a widespread prevailing thought among baseball observers that the players kind of got the raw end of the deal of the last CBA that was agreed to, and that this is that they've kind of learned from that mistake, and they appear to be not willing to do that again, frankly. Yeah, and there does seem to be that kind of prevailing thought within the MLBPA that time out here. We need to really kind of make some amends.
They've seen how contracts have gone and how veterans are suddenly signing 1-year deals for low money after years of making decent money with multi-year contracts.
If you look at the year-over-year, and frankly, it's almost decade over decade increase in player salaries / contracts versus the worth of Major League Baseball franchises.
Yes.
Okay, and how much money owners have, how much they've increased their capital over X amount of years versus the players, and that's just stuff that everybody can relate to. That's just writing that down the back of a napkin. You can figure that out. Right. Yeah, and so you got to kind of toss out. You toss out the people who think that the players are overpaid, because I don't listen to that, and then you got to toss out the people who hate the owners. So you toss out those two extremes, kind of like in judging, where you throw out the highest and the lowest, and what are you left with? And I think if you throw those factions out, the public opinion court is firmly on the player side. Yeah. Now, having said all that, nobody wants to see the games lost, and nobody wants to see the season truncated, and nobody wants to see labor strife. That's for sure. But I think that if it's being portrayed as the players are just more unified this time, I think that's a workable proposition for a lot of people. Yeah. Now, they may not like the fact that the games may be lost. I still think, though, Al, that there's going to be, and maybe I'm just Pollyannish here, but I really think there's going to be some sort of agreement that's going to be signed. Now, we may lose some spring training, indeed, but I think as far as the regular season goes, I still, for some reason, believe that there's going to be a full-blown regular season, and I could be totally wrong.
And that's why I think the owners will break first, because they don't want to lose a game. They don't want to lose a regular season game, because then they'll have to start paying money back to TV and advertisers and
they're coming off
and all their partners.
Kind of some rough. The 2020 was all screwed up because of COVID. Yeah, and then in 2021, in 2020 they had games without fans. And that didn't help. You had empty stadiums and piped-in audio from crowd noise and so forth, and truncated season to begin with, and nobody in the stands. 2021, I'm not sure how the attendance bounced back last year, but they're coming off. The owners are pretty fresh from the sting of not having concession sales and parking fees and people buying tickets. That do they want to go through that again? I mean, like 2 years ago, there was nobody. It wasn't anybody's fault. It was the COVID situation. But now, do they want to go through that again and have lose money on the gate again? Lose money on concessions? I don't know. I mean, they just went through that a couple years ago.
Yeah. Oh, and honestly, you can put me in the hate the owners category. But because they do things like they claim they lost money because of the pandemic, but there's no proof of that because they won't open the books, and that's something that the players would love to see. Or they say, "Oh, we're losing money." No, you're losing anticipated revenue. You may still be breaking even. That's the weasel words that we're constantly hearing from these people. And a lot of these owners are fail sons and people who did baseball is fewer and fewer Mike Ilitches. Mike Ilitch made his money himself. He started with one pizzeria and built a monstrous chain. But the Tigers owner now is his son, who didn't do a damn thing to earn any of that money. He is there just to maintain it. If you know what I'm saying. Right. A lot of these owners now are second and third generation people who kids who were born on third base and think they hit a triple, or they're types who made their money in extremely sketchy ways. Specifically venture capitalists and people like that who are just awful people when it comes to how they leverage companies to the hilt and then bail on them, leaving those companies to fail after they pulled every single dime of them out. So I'm on the. You don't make $1 billion like some of these guys are worth without doing some awful things, or at the very least be doing some morally questionable things, and stepping on people and hurting people, or making promises that you ultimately don't keep, like the Illiches have. When it comes to with District Detroit, they haven't done a damn thing with District Detroit. So I am completely pro player. I am fuck the owners, and I hope they take them to the cleaners. And they probably won't take them to the cleaners, but I think that players will do far, far better in this round of negotiations than they have over the past 20 years. Just because the owners have kind of abused it. No, they have abused things like service time and how free agency is used, and keeping players in the minors an extra 6 weeks just so they can get another year of service time out of them. That's abusive to the players. So I am all for them getting what they want, and they do have a few things in their pocket. No, they need any expanded postseason, which what the owners dream of, because that's where all the big money is, right, has to be approved by the players and has to be negotiated. So if the players play their cards right, that's their big thing in their hip pocket, is the approving an extended postseason, and if they can get some of these owners to finally compromise, I'm sure. I'm with you. I don't think we're going to miss any games. I just think it's going to go on for another 4 weeks until finally someone breaks. Will probably be the owners and say they'll make that excuse. We don't want to lose any more money, and then they'll finally negotiate in good faith, and hopefully there'll be some compromises made, and everybody's happy. We have baseball in April. So, it's very frustrating as a fan, because how many lockouts and strikes have we lived through in Major League Baseball? So, and God forbid we end up in another situation like 1972. We have two teams play different seasons, different length of seasons. I mean, that's how the Tigers won the 72 division, because they played one less game. So anyway, Greg, it's frustrating to see. I am pro player. I am pro union. And I hope they take the owners to the cleaners, and I hope the owners get bent over backwards, because they've had it coming for a long time, as you've said. Mm-hmm. I mean, when it comes down to it, these people aren't. These guys aren't jumping through hoops to buy franchises because they want a toy. They are doing it at this point because they see these franchises just going nuts when it comes to valuations. I mean, the Illiches bought the Tigers for $60 million in what it was, 89, 90, something like that. It's probably worth well north of $1 billion, probably closer to $2 billion. That's a nice return on investment, to say the very least. So that's where you see that, so none of these owners are hurting. So,
right.
Throw a bone to the players. Let's have a season, and that's that. All right, Greg, how about question 2 of the birthday game? Because I want to start smelling like a sailor.
You already drink like a sailor, so I may as well. This person was born on this date in 1960. As I said, he played with 5 teams in the NHL, scored 608 career goals. And by the way, this is a little tidbit. That's the most goals scored by somebody who was not drafted by an NHL team, which I didn't know that. But he was elected to the Hall of Fame in 2010. He played for the Red Wings in the early to mid 90s. And let's see what else can I say that's not going to give it away. He played for a team that's he also played a long time for a team that is in the league still, but is not in its original city. I'm going to say that.
And what years did he say he played in the 90s?
He played for the Red Wings from like 92 to 96.
God damn it. Wouldn't have to be a defenseman who's best known for playing in Edmonton, is it?
No. Big time goal scorer.
Big time goal scorer.
Obviously 608 goals.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. I'm drawing a blank on that name as well.
They're thinking of Paul Coffey.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Coffey. So, big time goal scorer. Oh, shoot. And he played for the Wings before they won a title. So
just before, yeah.
Just before they won a title. Huh.
He was disgusted having to shake Claude Lemieux's hand
Oh, shit. Now I know exactly who you're talking about, and I still can't remember his name. I know exactly who you're talking about, because that's the giveaway right there. Oh. I can't believe I shook his effing hand, was right. I think the quote after that game.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, I even know what he looks like. I can see it in my head. I can see him I can see his face. And I'm drawing a blank on the name. Oh, fuck.
That's one of the worst feelings in the world when you can't think of somebody's name.
I'm just gonna have to. I know who it is. I can't think of the name. I know exactly who it is. I can't think of the name.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna get this. I'm not gonna get the Old Spice. So you might as well just tell it now, Greg. Because
okay, well,
just tell it now.
Dino Ciccarelli.
Ciccarelli, yes, Dino Ciccarelli. Dino Ciccarelli scored that many goals. Come on. Anyway, all right. With that, all right. I still can't remember. I can't believe I forgot his name. I really can't. Especially you literally threw me a literal softball and I whipped. So, all right. Let's talk a little bit about the Lions, Greg, because it's still the season isn't over yet. We got the Super Bowl in a few days, but we're not going to talk about he who will not be named who was once a quarterback here. Because if you want to hear that discussion, just turn on local talk radio. That seems to be what they're discussing 24/7. All right. It's interesting, Greg, that the Lions have named a new offensive coordinator. I believe they did that last night, and they named tight end coach Ben Johnson. He was promoted from position coach to offensive coordinator. Obviously, that probably means Dan Campbell is still going to be the guy blinking the play calls during games. This is not really a surprise because, one, he got a test run while the Lions were coaching in the Senior Bowl, and also Dan Campbell has been very effusive about Johnson's contributions to the offensive schemes after Campbell took over play calling mid-season. So this is not a surprise at all, and from all accounts, it's not unexpected, and he's so far gotten good reviews. What's really interesting, though, Greg, is that the Lions actually have coaches who are in demand of other teams. This is hard to believe. I'm not used to this. I mean, has this ever happened in our lifetime? Guys are actively working for the Lions and are actually getting interviews for promotions. For example, the Vikings have requested to interview Lions defensive backs coach Aubrey Pleasant for their defensive coordinator job, and he's considered maybe the favorite that he just may get the job. Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn had head coaching interviews with the Broncos and Saints, didn't get either job, and has now said, I'm going to be the best defensive coordinator in Lions history, but at the very least he's getting interviews, and he's going to be a head coach. It just didn't happen with this round the way it looks. Anthony Lynn, who the Lions fired from that offensive coordinator position I just talked about, he was almost immediately hired by the Niners to be their assistant head coach. So this is uncharted territory for Lions fans to actually see their coaches of the team actively being recruited by other teams while they're still employed by the Lions. So honestly, we did our fair share of calling out Dan Campbell, especially the first half of the year, but they closed out the season fairly well, and we even said before the season started, it looks like he's put together a pretty damn solid coaching staff. And going by what we've seen during this offseason, why teams are looking to hire for the following year, he did a pretty damn good, bang-up job of hiring assistants.
You have to tip your hat. I mean, you have a team that won 3 games, and you mentioned all those names of people that are being interviewed and being requested to be interviewed and so forth. And hey, they're the ones that are in the know. They know all that stuff. I mean, we are on the outside. We make give our little opinions and give our takes on it. But bottom line is the folks that are, making these phone calls and setting up these interviews are the ones that know, of course, more than we do about why they would want to talk to an Aubrey Pleasant, for example, or to talk to an Aaron Glenn and so forth, and Anthony Lynn, being snatched up almost immediately, although he was only with the Lions for a year, by the 49ers. So, I guess, again, I think we talked about this a show or two ago about how what you're looking for in a coach these days is maybe a little bit different than what you were looking for in a coach 10, 15, 20 years ago in terms of, more about relationships, more about communication, more about, the X's and O's are still in there, of course, but I think a lot of coaches in general are going to know their X's and O's. That's why they're doing it. Those other intangibles that frankly have gotten some people fired around the league because there was either miscommunication or just simply a bad relationship between themselves and either their players or their bosses, i.e. the owners. So much of it is about relationships. Of course, you have to perform, and one-loss record is definitely in there. But, we're seeing guys, Al, getting fired as head coaches 1-2 years in, and it's becoming. Yeah,
it's not like it used to be where you get 4 years. It doesn't happen anymore. Right. Unless you're the Lions, but,
I'm not sure if owners are just willing to cut bait sooner rather than later. There could be power struggles. There's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah.
But I think what you're seeing with guys like Glenn getting some traction and Aubrey Pleasant is there must be something that these teams that are wanting to interview these folks are seeing in terms of those other intangibles, the way they get along with players, how players respond to them, their persona, their personality, whatever you want to call it, is maybe becoming more of a factor than back in the day when you were hiring the Mike Ditkas of the world and the Sam Weishes of the world and people like that, George Seifert, those kind of guys, maybe, and even Belichick when he was hired. That kind of coach maybe is not the blueprint anymore for success. We're in a very different world now. We're in a different world culturally. We're in a different world politically. We're in a different world in a lot of different respects. And I think that what we're seeing is teams are willing to look past the Lions not only having won 3 games and looking and kind of throwing that out the window and looking more at, well, how does he relate to the players? What is the what kind of a guy is he? What kind of a character guy is he? I think teams are just looking at that kind of a thing more, and that's why you're seeing guys from losing teams get this kind of traction, because usually you wouldn't. These kind of guys would never get a sniff of anything unless there was some team success that went along with it. So that's my opinion. That's why we're seeing this kind of the Aubrey Pleasant thing kind of surprised me a little bit. I mean. I know you've made the mention before that when you hire a guy, what's it going to do for the fan base, and that's what's the sell? Are you going to be able to sell Aubrey Pleasant from a team within your own division who your team always beats, by the way, and then that team won 3 games, and we're going to hire that team's defensive backs coach to be our new defensive coordinator? Is that going to get the Viking crowd excited? I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, maybe it's less about that. It's more about we just think that this guy would be a good fit. We like him. We like his personality. We like the way the players talk about him. We like the way the players responded to him. And we like I'm sure Dan Campbell's going to give a good recommendation for him as well, Pleasant. And I know he was a little scared to lose Glenn. He thought that because after Sean Payton retired or quit, that all of a sudden that New Orleans job came open, and Glenn had such a history with the Saints. Campbell was a little nervous. I hope he doesn't go. We really need him. And some people were kind of concerned that Glenn might have gotten that job. But so that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, it's just refreshing to see the Lions coaches in demand, and hopefully it translates into more victories next year, because fans are all upset. Oh my God, we might lose this coach, we might lose that coach. Well, one, coaching staffs rarely stay stable from season to season. And two, if your coaches are getting poached, that's a good thing, because that means you had good coaches, and the guy who did the hiring made good hires, and he's likely to do it again. So I'm not going to, if they lose another guy or two, I'm not going to get too uptight about it. It's I think this is a positive for the Lions, and it's the first time I can remember being positive about Lions coaching. And it's, like I said, this is for a 3-win team. It's hard to believe we're talking a lot about like this.
Right.
But, all right. But the more interesting thing that happened over the past couple of weeks, Greg, is that Brian Flores, the fired Dolphins head coach, essentially set his career on fire, but in cause of the greater good. Because when I saw what he did, the first guy who came to mind, Curt Flood.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
And we'll talk about the the similarities here, but Brian Flores, who was fired despite having a pretty darn good record with a team that was trying to tank, was fired by Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, who is a University of Michigan alum and a gazillionaire. This is a guy, he got fired. I think he won 7 straight games this year towards the end of the year. With his quarterback is Tua Tagovailoa of all people.
Right.
But he was still fired. And over this past, during that little dead time between the championship games and the Super Bowl, it was Flores announced that he had filed a class action lawsuit over the NFL's Rooney Rule. And if you don't know what the Rooney Rule is, it's essentially that whenever there's a coaching opening, teams need to at least interview 2 minorities before they make the hire. And for the most part, a lot of these interviews turn out to be a sham, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But realistically, Flores he's not, for a guy who deserves another job in the NFL for what he did in Florida, in Miami, he's not going to get another job in the NFL, not as a head coach after this. But this is in service of the greater good, because I think anybody with half a brain could see that many of these Rooney Rule interviews are shams, or at the very least are courtesies at best. But the lawsuit has accused the league of conducting sham interviews, incentivizing losses, and pressuring coaches to improperly recruit players. Flores put in a legal statement, which this is what I've read, and this is what I've seen media guys say, that black coaches have been saying privately for years behind closed doors, specifically that they received job interest to fulfill the Rooney Rule and are not considered to be serious candidates for most of those openings. And just to go on about the Rooney Rule, the Lions kind of got sucked into this because the Bob Quinn era Lions were accused of one of those sham interviews by Terrell Austin's agent. Terrell Austin was the Lions defensive coordinator during the Jim Campbell era, and Austin's agent said he told us to the AP that the team had not interviewed Terrell Austin in good faith. As he put it, former Lions general manager Bob Quinn knew he was hiring Matt Patricia. I think everybody on the planet knew he was going to do that, and he used Terrell to comply with the Rooney Rule. Didn't work out well for the Lions. Never should have fired Jim Campbell. I like that little dig at the end where he twisted the knife. But also, along with this, Flores also claimed that Dolphins owner allegedly said he would pay $100,000 for every loss the team had in 2019 as they were tanking for the number 1 draft pick, which ended up being Joe Burrow, who's in the Super Bowl this year, this week. That year, Miami finished 5-11 as Flores led the team to a 5-4 finish after an 0-7 start. Also in the lawsuit, Dolphins general manager Chris Greer at the time told Flores that Ross was mad his new coach had compromised the team's draft position. So right there, that's essentially throwing games, and that's a federal crime, if this is true. Ross also allegedly pressured Flores to recruit a prominent quarterback in violation of NFL tampering rules, a.k.a. that would be one Tom Brady, who at the time was still under contract with the Patriots. So, all this, I think to take a few things from that, I think Flores is finally saying what everybody believed but wouldn't say out loud, that the Rooney Rule is bullshit. It's worse than affirmative action, because most of these interviews really don't lead to anything for a lot of these black coaches. When it comes to tanking, incentivizing tanking, when he said, I'll give you $100,000 per loss, that is, I saw an interesting argument there about that. What would the league's partners in betting have to say? What would FanDuel and Caesars and all these companies that are tied in with the NFL say about, we have an owner that wants to intentionally throw games? There's all kinds of ugly stuff that could bubble to the top when it comes to that, when it comes to betting and throwing games and the money being exchanged in hands for that. and also the fact that, well, tampering is tampering, and the NFL doesn't allow it, even though I'm sure it probably does happen. You don't want your head coach doing that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that, the owner should have a henchman to do that kind of thing. But regardless of that, tampering is also illegal in the NFL. Right. I believe it's not breaking any federal laws or anything like that, but it's highly immoral when it comes to how the NFL does business. So I hope, what will likely happen is that the NFL will settle this out of court, trying to make it go away. Flores will never work in the NFL again, but he'll take home a shit ton of cash. And the NFL will go on, will say something to the effect of, we are encouraging our teams to open their jobs to minorities. You know what I'm saying. They'll just say the same thing they've been saying for decades when it comes to minority hiring. But you got to give Brian Flores all the credit in the world for doing this, because this really reminded me of Curt Flood all over again. Because if not for Curt Flood in Major League Baseball in the late 60s, he's the man who essentially ended the reserve clause when he took Major League Baseball owners to court, because the reserve clause essentially tied a player to one team for the entirety of his career unless the team traded or released him. There was no such thing as free agency before Curt Flood took Major League Baseball to court, and it was ruled illegal. Curt Flood's career was over, and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame just for that. But this is something very similar to me, where you have in this case, a black coach calling out injustice. He's calling out the bullshit as he has seen it. And it's obvious we have seen it. We saw it here in Detroit, as mentioned. Bob Quinn did the exact same thing. Everybody knew he was going to hire his buddy Matt Patricia, but he had to interview a couple minorities. So they interviewed the guy they had on hand in Terrell Austin. So this is another time where I hope Brian Flores, that he doesn't settle and this goes to court. I would love to see this go to court, and all of a sudden chaos would reign, and I would love it. I really would.
They say you can't legislate morality, and that to a degree that's true.
Right.
But in this case, I'm with you. I think that the NFL almost had to be this way. That somebody was going to have to take one for the team, if you will. Now, you mentioned Flores not ever coaching in the NFL again. On the surface, that would appear to be true.
Yeah,
I'm not ready.
Right.
I'm not ready right now to say that that's definitively true. But he's going to go through some things. The league's going to go through some things. Some uncomfortable, inconvenient truths are going to come out. And then we'll see what happens after the dust settles from all that.
Yeah.
The Rooney Rule, and I said this on Twitter, is to me one of the worst rules ever created in sports. To me it's pathetic.
Yeah.
When I say pathetic, what I mean by that is that to me what it does is it further, instead of what it's intended to do, which is to try to, back to what I said a few minutes ago about legislating morality. I know what the intention is. The intention was, of course, to try to give more minorities some skin in the game. Okay, and I know that's what the intention was, but what it does instead is it further marginalizes minorities by saying, we're just gonna. To me, it's always been nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I've always called it nudge, nudge, wink, wink from that old Monty Python sketch, which says that we'll give the interviews. Terrell Austin is, you mentioned, bandied about as being a sham interview when everybody knew the Lions were going to hire Matt Patricia. Sham interviews going on left and right. The one with where the Giants ended up hiring that. What was his name? Brian. Who's the guy the Giants hired? And Belichick, somebody a text.
It's. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's nothing that's playing into it. Who
did he send a text to? Who did?
Well, he sent the text to Flores, congratulating him for getting the Giants job.
Yeah.
When it was supposed to, this is 3 days before it actually went to the other guy, the mediocre white guy who got the job.
Right.
Who Elton is supposed to go for.
And I don't know, Al, how nobody saw this coming. That when the Rooney Rule came into be, to me it was, you hear these things about win-win, lose-lose, or what. The rule, it ticked off the people who you don't care, who get ticked off, the racists, okay, whatever, because it's like the affirmative action argument. You're just doing it, it's anti-white, whatever the case may be. Then you've got the blacks now, other minorities, who this rule is supposed to help, and all it's done is, because the rule says all you have to do is interview, don't have to hire. Well, now you're going to have, guess what? I mean, this was foreseeable. You're going to have these now sham interviews, or let's interview a black guy because they say we have to. It never had a chance. To me, this rule never had a chance to succeed. It never had a prayer of achieving what it was supposed to achieve, which is to try to get more minorities hired as coaches in the NFL, head coaches, not interviewed but hired. I just think it's a terrible rule. It's bone tossing. It's nudge nudge wink wink. There's nothing about it that makes. I don't know how. It's almost like they didn't think it through. Like, okay, we're going to have this rule that says you're going to interview these minorities. You have to interview 2 or whatever it was. And it stops. Okay, and even the league says, well, we can't make them hire a black guy. We just say that they got to interview a couple of black guys. Well, I mean, that's worse. I think it's worse. I think if I'm a minority and I've got this rule now that says these teams have to interview 2 people who look like me. And then they're going to go ahead and hire the white guy anyway, which happens almost inevitably. I don't know how that placates anything. I don't know how that addresses anything. I don't know how that makes the minorities feel good. I don't know how that makes anyone feel good, frankly. It's the whole thing is just. So now, having said all that, what is the solution? I mean, the numbers are the numbers. I mean, there's one, that as of a little while ago, until the Texans hired Lovie Smith, there was one black head coach of the 32, and that was Mike Tomlin. That's it.
Yeah.
And I don't. Based on that alone, there's something wrong there.
Yeah.
But yet, I don't know how you fix it, Al. I mean, I don't know. The Rooney Rule may have had good intentions, somewhat, kind of, sort of, but it was never the right way to go about this. It was never the right way to try to get. And now the only other thing the league really could have done, which wouldn't have been good either, was to just say, which you can't do. You can't say, well, the league must have 4 black head coaches at all times. Well, you can't.
Yeah, you can't have mandates. You can't have hiring mandates like that.
No, you can't. No, you can't do that either. So they're, in fairness to the league, they're kind of in between a rock and a hard place with this thing. Because ultimately, it's the owners who make these decisions. The NFL doesn't hire head coaches. The league does, or the teams do. So I mean, all you can hope for is that there's going to be some owners out there that when looking at candidates, all things being equal, which that's a loaded statement, I know, will look at hiring the black guy.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for Lovie Smith because Lovie Smith gets this job. Of course, he's been a head coach before.
Yeah, after all this broke, Lovie Smith was hired by Houston.
And now people are going to say, well,
he was a token hire. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but this is not going to be fixed overnight. This is not going to be fixed with hiring Lovie Smith. It's not going to be fixed, over a period of even a few years. It's going to be something that hopefully will just fix itself. Yeah. Because there'll be enough owners that will give these guys, these minorities, and we should say minorities because it's not just black guys. I mean, there's people of, maybe Hispanic descent or what you name.
Robert Saleh, for example.
Right.
Yeah, Middle Eastern descent. Right.
There you go. And so this is designed to help all minorities, not just the black folks.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that the league is X amount of percent of black players, and the coaching ranks does not look like the player ranks. Okay. Now there's a shit ton of black assistant coaches, of course. Yeah. There's lots of black coordinators, of course.
Yeah, look at the Lions staff, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But the head coach is white.
Yeah, and I don't know what the fix is, but back to Flores. This comparison to Flood. Somebody was going to have to call out the league about this, and Flores has now put himself out there. He's going to get, I'm sure, a bunch of hate.
At the very least, he'll be offered a shit ton of money for this to go away.
But in the flip side of that, he's going to be the target of hate. He's going to be the target of people are just are going to want him to sit down and shut up.
Yeah, shut up and dribble, as they would say. Or you got your money, what, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. But again, that's the kind of guy you needed to do this, because Flores, in a way, he made his bank, so he can ultimately. He's probably decided, he decided, I'm going to do this because I can afford not to work as a head coach again.
Right. And you said at the top of the discussion that he is, doing this for the greater good. Yeah. He's doing this for the good. Now, the same thing with Flood, but Flood didn't have.
Flood was an even bigger sacrifice.
Well,
he wasn't a rich man.
He didn't have all that money. He was playing in a time where there wasn't any money to be made.
It ruined his career, and he ended up dying young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now he did, but the flip side to that is that Curt Flood is widely recognized. History is treating him well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. History is treating Curt Flood almost like the Rosa Parks of baseball.
Yeah, he's up there with Marvin Miller when it comes to baseball and labor relations.
But the fact that Flood was black, and the funny thing about the Flood thing is that it wasn't a black and white thing. No. Now the Flores thing is about blacks and whites.
Right.
Flood wasn't his being black was just
incidental, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it was more about going against the reserve clause, and he didn't think it was right. I don't remember Flood's impetus being scorned black guy.
No, this was just about ending the reserve clause, and every single player in baseball was affected by the reserve clause.
Right, and I think in retrospect, people get the impression that there was some sort of a racial component to the Flood thing. There really wasn't. It was just the fact that he happened to be a black guy.
Yeah, he was the guttiest guy. He had to have balls of steel to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
This is
what it reminds me of. You remember, the Rooney Rule started because of Matt Millen hiring Steve Mariucci about interviewing pretty much anybody back in the day. And it was named after Dan Rooney, the Steelers owner at the time, who thought things had to change, and obviously he had good intentions, but it was done very ham-fistedly.
Right.
And it just kind of reminded. You remember Sylvester Croom?
Of course.
A black assistant head coach, highly thought of, ultimately got a head job, but he had to go to the college ranks to do it.
Yeah.
It seemed like when he was in the NFL as a position coach, as a coordinator, he was a Lions coordinator for a few years.
Right.
Every time a job opening came up, Croom got an interview, and he never, ever got the job. Yeah. That's the sort of stuff that the Rooney Rule caused and brings up. And it seemed like every time Croom got interviewed, you knew he wasn't going to get the job, but they had to do something to meet the Rooney Rule terms. So essentially, Croom became the token interviewee, and I'm sure several teams did it. It seems like he was always on a list, but never got the job. And that's the sort of shit that the Rooney Rule caused, is stuff like that, where a guy is getting interviews and is highly qualified and probably deserves a job. Yeah. But he wasn't on that part of that old boys club, especially we're talking 15, 20 years ago when it was going on with him.
Right.
Well, he didn't have the right connections, wasn't buddy whatever, and so he was just the token interviewee. And it was a shame to see anybody with their eyes open could see it.
Well, I think what the Rooney Rule was trying to do was to get black minority guys foot in the door.
Yeah,
okay?
It wasn't designed to hire them. It was designed to to expand the horizon, so to speak.
Now, in fairness, I've been, I've just been very critical of the rule, and I stand by that criticism. But I have to acknowledge that I have to put myself back in time as to when the rule was established, as to what was going on in the league.
Yeah, and it was a different era, politically, sociology, all that stuff.
Right. So the rule at the time was, like you said, expanding the horizons, getting these guys feet in the door. Foots Walker, the basketball player. Getting their foot in the door, because prior to that wasn't happening with any regularity. Now, the Raiders, of course, hired Art Shell.
And the Raiders, to their credit, were always ahead of the curve for that kind of thing. Yeah.
And Rooney himself, his dad, Art Rooney, had tons of black players. The Steelers roster had a lot more black players on it faster than other teams in the NFL, if that makes any sense. Okay. So, but the rule at the time may have been a good one, in the sense that we need to get these teams, like you said, thinking outside the box a little bit, looking at different kind of candidates. Okay. What it hasn't done, though, is it
hasn't changed hiring practices that
and
much.
It's just it's
outlived its usefulness, if it ever had any to begin with.
It's expired. It's almost like milk that expires. It's no good anymore.
Right.
It's no good anymore, and so it needs to be. And I would love to hear a black person or a minority coach talk about the rule itself. I would love to know if in other words, if the Rooney Rule was abolished and just we're not going to do this anymore because it's a joke, would that be okay? Would it be okay to say we're not doing this anymore? This rule is not, like you said, outlived its usefulness. It's doing more harm than good. It's making the league look worse, frankly, than if they didn't have the rule at all. So would there be an appetite by the black folks to get rid of it? Just say we're not gonna do that anymore, or would they still want the rule to be in place? Because even though there are sham interviews happening, that maybe they feel like, well, if we don't have it at all, now the owners aren't beholden at all to, now I have no incentive to, or at least not any sort of mandate to interview minorities. So now they're really not going to do it. I don't know. I feel like even the black and minority people would be willing to say, this rule is kind of not serving us. It's not serving us. It's not doing us any. What good is it doing? We have one black. Before Lovey a little while ago, one black head coach of the 32. So how is the Rooney Rule helping? So you can't point to any data and say, well, since the Rooney Rule has been instituted, there's been, look at all these black head coaches that have no, you can't say that. There's no data that would support the continuance of the Rooney Rule. There really isn't.
Yeah, it's. I think you best put it best. It was of its time and it's now past its time.
Right.
So it's. I just hope that we start to see these guys finally get hired and give a more representative percentage of coaches, because right now it's ridiculous. There's Mike Tomlin and Lovie Smith, and I mean for a while it wasn't just Mike Tomlin was it, because of people getting fired and stuff. And that's ridiculous. So. But this is the NFL has been so full of itself for so many years, thinking it could do no wrong and get away with whatever, that I'm glad to see it being taken down to knees every once in a while, because it's a league that really needs it. It's full of itself, and it being led by a guy like Roger Goodell is not helping at all. All right, One more football topic. I don't know if you caught this. The Michigan Panthers rose from the grave, Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rebooted USFL will have 8 teams, one of which is the Michigan Panthers, who, as you know, if you're of a certain age, you remember they won the USFL championship in 1983 with Bobby Hebert under center and their star receiver Anthony Carter. And that was a fun team to watch. But what I also found interesting is one that their head coach and GM is former Oilers, Titans, Rams headman Jeff Fisher. I guess there was actually pictures posted to him today wearing the looking all mean, wearing that purple, which I also like to essentially bring back the colors that they were in that purple Panthers color polo. But for everything I've read, I think this is going to be a Michigan team in pretty much name only. The way the USL is going to be set up, I think they're going to be they're going to be centralized base, and they'll be playing round robin games kind of thing. I don't know all the details yet, but it's not like they're going to be playing at Ford Field or Comerica Park or anything like that. They're going to it's a made for TV league. I just thought it was cool that they brought the logo and the team name back, because it was kind of fun. When the USFL was actually I won't say a competitor to the NFL, but they actually had carved themselves out a place and looked like they were going to maybe be around for a while until Donald Trump came around and fucked them all over. So, but I just thought it was kind of cool that the Michigan Panthers are back.
I think so too. I
want a Panthers jersey now.
They were that was one of the slicker looking.
They had a good looking uni.
They did a good. The helmet was. Yep. That was an NFL helmet. A lot of helmets in those other leagues, the USFL and the World Football League and the WLAF and all. Even though and they reminded me a lot. Some of those uniforms and helmets remind me of like NFL Europe. Remind me of like. Arena league teams. I would refer to it as
a softball team.
Yeah, it looks minor league to me.
Yes.
The Panthers helmet, to me, and maybe it's because the Carolina Panthers are now in the NFL, but
right.
the Michigan Panthers helmet looked like it could be in the NFL and not out of place. It looked like it was an NFL level helmet.
Right.
You can't say that about all the helmets that were in that league. Because they just looked minor league. There was something about them that looked minor league. But the Panthers helmet, I thought, looked like it could belong in the NFL if that happened.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know how that's going to work. I think all the games I think, Al, are going to be played in one place,
one central location. Yeah. I'm not sure where that's going to be, but
it's somewhere down south.
Yeah, it's not like it's a true competitor to. Or they're not trying to replicate what the original USFL tried to do. But, yay, the Panthers are back, which I always found kind of cool. And hopefully they'll give us something to cheer for. Even if they're going to be playing God knows where, and they won't be playing here out of Michigan. Right. All right, a couple things before we start wrapping things up. Do you want to talk about Jeremy Grant? You want to talk about Jim Harbaugh?
Let's talk about Harbaugh.
Yeah, because that's weird.
Let's
say that. As I put it in the show notes, Jim Harbaugh plays footy with the NFL, loses both his coordinators. And it's kind of bizarre how this all go down. Since the end of Michigan's most successful football season, probably going back to 2006, probably. And this is the first time they really had a legitimate shot at a national title in a decade and a half. And there has been a series of rumors swirling around Jim Harbaugh, Michigan's head coach, that he was seriously interested in returning to the NFL. He was linked to the Bears. He was linked to the Raiders, And then the most hot one was this past week when Harbaugh actually interviewed with the Vikings on National Signing Day of all days, with every indication being he would take the job if offered. And reportedly he had said some goodbyes, and he thought essentially he was just going to walk in, do a meet and greet, and get the job. And something happened. No one really knows for sure. But Harbaugh went in thinking he was going to get the job. He wasn't offered a job. He didn't get the job. He left without the job. And then so he returned back to Michigan as Michigan's head football coach. He announced he would return for the 2022 season, and said he would remain in Ann Arbor as long as he was still wanted. While all this unfolded, and this happened late January, defensive coordinator Mike McDonald, who John Harbaugh recommended off his Ravens staff to be the Michigan's defense coordinator, left Michigan to go back to the Ravens to become their defensive coordinator. And I don't think that was a big surprise. He was likely going to be a short-term guy anyway. He's an NFL guy. This was essentially, I'm going to pad the resume, show I can be a coordinator, and then go back to the league, and that's exactly what happened, even though I don't think anybody expected it to happen quite as soon as it did, but the Ravens' job unexpectedly opened up. But far more shocking and weirdly and interesting was the reigning national assistant coach of the year, winning offensive coordinator Josh Gattis, left. And the thing is, it wasn't like he left to become a head coach, didn't leave to go to the NFL. He took a lateral move at best. I think you could argue went to a worse program. And because he just became the offensive coordinator at the U, went to Miami, who is a worse team than Michigan right now, in worse shape. Actually, they just blew up their entire staff, and joining Mario Cristobal, who's their new head coach down there. But this is a guy who got all kinds of plaudits and credit for turning around Michigan's offense this past year, and he bails after and this happened immediately after the Vikings drama. And then Gattis, Greg, sent players a cryptic test claiming he wasn't wanted. Quote, "Unfortunately, the past few weeks have told a different story to me about very little appreciation I have here from administration. In life, I would never advise anyone to be where they are not wanted." Whatever the hell that means. There's a lot of speculation saying that if Harbaugh had left, Gattis wasn't going to get the head coaching job. And that's where the lack of appreciation comes from. But that's just speculation right now. Who knows? Was there some... it would not surprise me if there was some headbutting with Harbaugh, because everybody seems to ultimately butt heads with Harbaugh. And so Michigan has... I think they went internally for their offensive coordinator. They hired a guy from Vanderbilt who also has a history with the Ravens for their defense coordinator. That was announced tonight. But this whole thing has been an absolute cluster for the University of Michigan. Coming off a season they should be celebrating, and instead of building on that and having a gangbusters recruiting season and talking about what we're going to beat Ohio State next year, it's just been all about, is Harbaugh going to stay? Is Harbaugh is he going to get a new contract? Is he mad about having to take a pay cut? And what's going on with his assistants? So it's one of the more bizarre end of seasons I've ever seen from any team, period. But when you're talking Jim Harbaugh, I guess it shouldn't be a surprise.
No, that's for sure. The Gattis thing, I don't know what he's referring to when he says
about the
lack of appreciation.
Appreciation, the guy just won awards, for Christ's sake.
He said the administration.
He didn't use Harbaugh. He said administration,
which would mean the president. So I don't know what.
Or Ward Manuel. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. It could be that too. I don't know. I don't know what that means. I really don't.
Yeah.
Harbaugh though goes to Minnesota, flies to Minnesota, ostensibly feeling that he is hired.
Yeah.
As the coach of the Vikings, and he flies out there. For some inexplicable reason, both sides had different ideas of what this meeting was going to be all about, which to me is more of an indictment on Harbaugh than it is the Vikings, to be honest. Right. He gets there, gets halfway through the day and realizes that this is not a coronation but a regular interview. I'm not sure if he was offended by that or if he was disillusioned or whatever, and he texts or calls Manuel or whatever and says, okay, I'm coming back, I'm staying, and this is never going to happen again.
Let's go to work, I don't
know how you can say this is never going to happen again, but whatever. Okay.
Right.
Because he said it in his interviews, he said, which is what I thought he would say, which is, hey, I was so close to winning a Super Bowl, it's like the white whale that I've been chasing, and boy, it would have been really good to try to hit that. Okay. He called it the most coveted trophy in football.
Right.
The Vince Lombardi Trophy. And now he comes back, because, and let's face it, these folks who are trying to spin this as Jim Harbaugh is coming back because he didn't want the Vikings.
Yeah, that's trying to retcon it. That's bullshit.
He's coming back because the Vikings didn't want Jim Harbaugh. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, they weren't ready to hire him at that time.
Right.
So I don't know how you then come back and say, let's go to work, and I'm all Michigan, this is not going to happen again, and I just wanted to get this out of my system. And well, I don't know. Okay, if your ultimate goal, which it sounds like it is to win a Super Bowl, then how can you say that this is it? I'm never going to do this again. It doesn't make any sense to me. So it just, I don't. The whole thing was just weird. It was awkward, and I don't know. I mean, what's Michigan going to do other than accept? Of course, they're going to welcome him back. They're not going to, feel like they're jilted or something like that. But, I mean, clearly the guy left town last week ready to sign a contract with the Vikings. Let's face it. Yeah. And now he's got to come back and pretend like, well, it was just to kind of scratch an itch. Nobody scratches an itch like that. You're going out there to be hired, not to be interviewed, to be hired. So don't tell me that, this was just me nosing around and see what's up. No. It was embarrassing. I mean, it was – the Vikings didn't want
it looks like – it makes you look like Harbaugh had an affair, and now he's crawling back to his ex or his current girlfriend, so to speak.
Oh, baby, I love you. I love you.
Yeah, it was a mistake. Oh, I'm so sorry. And it's, and I one thing I did hear about this that makes a shit ton of sense that really shows that Harbaugh is so weird and he's handling things badly is that he famously doesn't have an agent. He does, the miscommunication or whatever the hell happened with the Vikings. If he has an agent or he has lawyers or staff or someone that handles that kind of back channel stuff, that stuff gets tossed. That stuff gets sorted out with your agent, who then goes to you and says, "This is what's going to happen," or "This is what they want," and then he can get back with them. It's handled back channel. It doesn't come out in public the way it messily did because Harbaugh handles everything himself. This is one of those times where it should have been handled in the back channels. It wasn't because Harbaugh doesn't have anybody to do that for him, and it blew up in his face. And now he has to come crawling back to Michigan like he is, like I said, like to the jilted lover saying he made a mistake. And you got to wonder, is this going to happen every offseason with Harbaugh? If Michigan continues to have good to great seasons, if they continue to win a lot of games, and for most part they do have under Jim Harbaugh, is this going to happen how long is he going to be happy in Ann Arbor? He said right now, I'm here as long as they want me to stay. If you're Ward Manuel, I'm already putting together a list of guys I want to talk to because I don't trust Harbaugh as far as I can throw him when it comes to how long he's going to stay. Because I think it proved this year, it took him 7 years, and he finally did everything he said he was going to do, make Michigan relevant nationally again. And he said, okay, now it's time to get the hell out of here because I don't think I can do any more than this. And then it all blew up. Now he's got to come back. If I'm Ward Manuel, I feel I'm insulted. But I can also see Harbaugh being upset that he was asked to take this massive pay cut, because of one bad COVID year. And, right now it feels like a marriage of convenience between the Michigan Athletic Department and Jim Harbaugh. And those kind of relationships don't last long term.
Right. Right. Exactly. That was the biggest.
Yeah.
Weirdest thing of all when he told Ward, "Hey, this will never happen again." Really?
Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
The whole
with
thing.
His history, I'm surprised Harbaugh has managed to last this long at Michigan, considering his history of job hopping and his history of butting heads with administrations.
Well, why do you suppose that happens, though, Al? Why do you suppose two sides have such a different view of what how this was supposed to go down. I mean,
that's a good question.
How do you think Harbaugh got that notion versus the Vikings not having that notion? I don't. Was that just something he just put in his head on his own?
That's how it's sounding. It really
I'm Jim Harbaugh,
if that's true, and it kind of sounds like it, that's having an insane amount of hubris.
Right.
They want to talk to me. Well, shoot, with my resume, this is a done deal. They just want to make sure I don't have any skeletons in my closet, and I'm going to dot the I's, cross the T's, and I'll be, and that evening I'll have a new job. Yeah, it's just really, in the end, either that was the issue or the interview went so badly it just completely blew up, and no one's talking about what exactly happened, other than, well, we've mentioned that Harbaugh thought he was going to get the job and didn't get it. So it's a mess. It's hard to believe a team coming off one of their best seasons in team history is now it's in utter chaos, and they're replacing assistants, and it's probably hurting their recruiting class, and the Michigan State administration and fan base are just laughing their asses off right now. And it's but it goes with Jim Harbaugh. And the thing of Harbaugh, Greg, he could go out next year and do the same damn thing again and go 11-1, and it would not surprise me one bit, because Harbaugh is just wired so weirdly. Who the hell knows what he's going to do? So.
Right.
All right. One more thing before we wrap it up. Jeremy Grant. Are the Pistons going to trade him? NBA trade deadline's in a couple days. I believe Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
Pistons hold what some people are saying the most valuable trade chip in Jeremy Grant, their power forward, the guy who was essentially the centerpiece free agent signing last year by Troy Weaver, because he's a Troy Weaver guy. But it looks like both sides, for all the talk between both parties, especially last year, that Grant came here because he loved Detroit. He loved that Detroit has for the most part, an all-black front office and coaching staff, and he wanted to do something in a black city like Detroit, and he was given a chance to be the man, be the number one option. And now I think things have the rose-tinted glasses have come off both parties. Pistons know that they're still a few pieces away, and by the time that window opens up, Grant will be asking for some extremely big money. It may not fit what the team's looking to do, so looks like now they're both open to a trade. But the team may be in a holding pattern. ESPN is reporting no offers have seriously progressed, saying the Pistons might wait until the offseason to decide whether to make Grant available in trade talks or sign him to a contract extension, which he would be eligible at the end of this year. And a lot of this is depending on where the Pistons fall in the draft lottery and what prospects are available. So, and our talks for the Athletic is saying the Nets, the Trailblazers, the Kings, the Wizards, all are interested in him, though who knows if the trade will be made. And right now I think the opening offer, at least the Pistons are asking for at least 2 first-round draft picks or a first-round draft pick and an intriguing young player. So I just find this interesting because a few weeks ago, Greg, it seemed like a fait accompli. He was going to be traded, and now we're near the trade deadline. Now there's talk, well, the Pistons might hold on to him. They like him. We don't know. So I don't know if this is gamesmanship, which it probably is.
Right.
Troy Weaver is pretty good at that kind of thing.
Right.
But I could also see the argument where the Pistons really like him. They do still need veteran leadership, and the guy's a hell of a player who plays very well for them. So I can see this argument going both ways. And the other thing, the type of team that will trade for Jeremy Grant, you're not going to get lottery picks. You're going to get draft picks in the 20s. So I don't know what the Pistons are going to do here. I like watching Jeremy Grant as a player. I also think he's probably a far better fit on a team where he's the number 2 or number 3 option. He's as well as he played for the Pistons, Greg, I don't think he's the number 1 guy. And obviously that's not going to happen here now with Cade Cunningham, and Sadiq Bey has really blossomed when Grant was out for those 6 weeks with that hurt thumb. So I do think the best course of action would be to trade him, and it has to be. You can't give him away. That's for damn sure. He's got to get you multiple draft picks or multiple young players. But I can understand this line going out here. Well, why don't we wait till the offseason? We'll see what the draft looks like. So I can see where I'd trade him personally. I would just say It's time. It's time to move on.
Well, at the beginning of the season, I don't know that I would have said that. I think I would have said, don't trade him.
Yeah.
But I think that's when I thought the Pistons were this is on me. This is my fault. I thought they were going to be closer to respectability than
like a play-in game contender type thing. Yeah.
So, right. So that's obviously not the case. They're still, frankly, and we were talking about this with City Hall last week, they still need another lottery pick type guy, and one like City said, one more dip into the lottery pool, and then you can, and then at that point you hope that you're never going to be there again. But so now I'm thinking that maybe it does make sense, like you said, to see if you can get multiple assets back for him. The Pistons probably won't be ready to make some serious noise for another 2 or 3 years. So you can, now I think Grant's 26, 27. You can bring a guy in, or guys, multiple assets in, whether they be draft picks or younger players from other teams, and maybe be better off that way in the long run. Back at the beginning of the year, when I thought this was going to be a shorter trip back to respectability, to me it made sense to hold on to him, because I thought that he would be a key component to whatever starting five the Pistons would put out there that would be that respectable unit. It's not going to. It hasn't worked out that way, obviously. Although Saddiq Bey has rebounded very nicely from his earlier slump of the early part of the year. He's really come on like gangbusters, but it's still not enough, as we can see by the win-loss record. It's still not enough. They still need another stud. And Grant is a nice complementary piece. He's a good player. He's a nice complementary piece. But he's not. He's
the kind of guy who can put you over the top on the right team.
Yeah, well, hey, exactly. There are a lot. Hey, there are a lot of, and that's what's so funny about this Grant thing. Yeah. A lot of times when guys like this become the subject of trade rumors, it usually is just like a handful of teams that are mentioned as possible destinations.
Right.
I've seen a bunch of teams. As potential trade partners with the Pistons, which is a good thing if you're the Pistons. Yeah. Now the flip, of course, is that you run the risk of making a bad trade. Okay, you run the risk of getting it wrong.
It's the old, well, we can trade him, and you hope you get a player as good as Jeremy Grant, ultimately.
But
obviously the hope is winning someone's better.
Right. From a long-term perspective. Now, having said all of this, if it turns out that the Pistons don't move him, I'm fine with that too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not on this trade Grant or bust movement either. Yeah. But I'm just saying that I'm with you that if I had my druthers and if I could make a trade, I would do that. It's not going to break my heart if they don't. It's not going to be a bad thing if they don't. It's not. It won't have been the wrong move to not trade him. Is what I'm trying to get at, because he is still. I mean, he won't be ancient by the time. I mean, you hope he won't be ancient by the time.
Well, he's going to be. I looked it up. He's going to be 28 next month.
Okay.
And he's going to be looking for probably a 4-year contract. If it's maxed out, it's $112 million.
That's the problem.
Because that's the question. Do you want to pay a Jeremy Grant $28, $29 million a year?
That's the rub. That is the rub right there. And that's something you have to consider, because it's not just about basketball. It's about finances. It's about long-term commitments to players. It's about where are we going to be in 3 years if we're going to have an albatross on our hands. We're just getting ourselves out from under the Blake Griffin situation.
Yep.
Do we want to put ourselves back out in there? And it's, and with all due respect to Jeremy Grant, because he is a good player. Yeah. He's not his playing on the Pistons or not, if everything were to stay the same, isn't going to make the Pistons any better. They still need to, whether they trade him or not, they still need people. I mean, they need better people. They need more people. So you may as well try, if you can try to accelerate this situation and get some assets back. That's something I might look at. You mentioned the money. I mean, that's another big consideration, obviously.
Yeah, when it comes to Jeremy Grant, it's I would put it this way: that as like City said, the Pistons need another star, the guy essentially, which they need in today's league. Jeremy Grant is the guy you need around the guy, so to speak. He's that high-end role player, that high-end starter that a star player needs on the floor with him. He is not the star, but he is a high-level support guy for the star. And do you want to pay that kind of guy $25 to $30 million a year at age 31? That's the question. I don't know if the Pistons do. All right, with that, let's wrap this puppy up. Greg, who's your jerk of the week?
This might seem a little unfair because I don't know the whole story, granted, and maybe I'll come out looking kind of like a jerk for doing this, but I'm going to give my jerk of the week to Kyler Murray. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's up with this kid in this kid's head. He's played 3 years in the NFL with the Cardinals. He hasn't really done anything, frankly. Mm-hmm. He has made the team better. I wouldn't put him personally. I wouldn't put him in the top echelon of quarterbacks. Not quite yet, anyway. He might be in the top 10, maybe. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't put him much higher than low in the top 10. He hasn't really, he had some awful stretches this past year. One of them was against the Lions, frankly. When the Cardinals kind of fell off, they righted themselves at the very end of the season to get in the playoffs. But they were just not the same team in the second half of the season, and neither was he, frankly. I don't know what's going on with him. He scrubbed all of his social media of the Cardinals. Anything having to do with the Cardinals, he got rid of. He's been mum. Mm-hmm. Nobody seems to know what's going on with him, where his head's at, if he's unhappy indeed, if he wants to trade from the Cardinals. Nobody really knows. Yeah. And so and the thing that makes me the reason I'm giving him my jerk of the week is I'm hoping this is like almost a preemptive jerk of the week. I hope he's not a jerk of the week because he's doing this for some weird attention, or he's just kind of this flaky kind of a guy who's is going to end up being okay. He's going to play for the Cardinals for 5 or 6 more years, and all this is going to be forgotten. Mm-hmm. Or if this is some precursor to some strange, I'm not going to call it breakdown, but some sort of a strange emotional thing he's enduring that may, and if that's the case, then obviously I'm a jerk for calling him a jerk if he's having emotional issues. I don't know what's going on with him. Mm-hmm. I really don't. And it's kind of the talk of the league right now, even though obviously the big talk is the Super Bowl. But right now, Kyler Murray is trending because people want to know what's going on in his head. Everybody's making a big deal about it. He's stopped following the Cardinals' Twitter account and all this other stuff. So I just think that I'm just scared that there's some sort of a weird motive here that is going to come to light that's going to make him look even worse than this temporarily holding the Cardinals. I'm saying hostage, which isn't really true because he's under contract. Right. But I don't know what he's doing. I don't know I don't know why he would be unhappy, to be honest with you, unless there's something going on with the coach. I don't know. Mm-hmm. All I know is that he was not very good in the second half of the season. Almost cost the Cardinals a playoff spot. He was lousy against the Lions. Yep. And so he hasn't done anything in the NFL, to me, to warrant this kind of eccentric behavior. To me, guys can only be, this is my old curmudgeon in me, only guys who have done anything in any sport are allowed to be eccentric in my book. Yeah. If you haven't done anything, you can't be eccentric. And to me, he's being eccentric, and I don't know where it's coming from or what he's up to. So this isn't like a jerk of the week, because I really think the kid's a jerk. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a jerk of the week because I think his actions are kind of weird. And he's not explaining himself. If there's something going on that he's unhappy with and he wants to have addressed, then he ought to say it. Yeah. Instead of these cryptic, I'm not going to follow you anymore on social media, I'm going to scrub my account of anything mentioning you, without any sort of talks with the team about what's going on with him. Yeah.
As many people have said, social media was a mistake. This is the sort of thing that who knows how it would have gone differently 20 years ago. And if a player was unhappy, it would have ended up talking to a reporter, and it would have came out as to what's going on. Instead, we get this cryptic bullshit, like you said, where he just wipes his social media and doesn't say a thing.
Right.
So who the hell knows what's going on? So I'm kind of with you there. Oh, God. My jerk of the week, I'm going to go for an evergreen. I would be the Olympics. The Olympics as a whole, the Olympics coverage.
Okay.
Oh, my God. I don't know if you've been watching much of the Olympics, and I do enjoy quite a bit of it just because the actual competition with these athletes who are in these relatively minor sports for the most part, and this is their one shot of glory for most of them in their athletic career, or at least they only really get this shot, super worldwide visible shot once every 4 years. But the IOC is incredibly corrupt. It's being held in an oppressive regime. I mean, come on, here in the States, we're no great shakes by any means, but I mean, China is that is a country that does horrible things to its people and its oppressors. It oppresses people, things like that. I mean, you could go on about China's atrocities. The coverage, we're seeing on ABC, NBC, which is atrocious as always. Where it concentrates on just the U.S. Athletes. It really doesn't show. It doesn't really give you the sense of what's going on because it's so laser focused for the most part, on American athletes, and the fact that it tends to over focus on specific sports, specifically figure skating. Figure skating. Let's see the preliminaries. Let's see the shorts. Let's see the long. There are so many entertaining sports in the Olympics that I don't need to see 8 hours of figure skating. And thankfully, they do have Peacock, but you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
To see some of these, some of those issues do get fixed because they will show every single athlete in an event. They'll show an entire event, not just pick and choose like they used to do you'll see on the big networks, on NBC and USA. But the Olympics are so incredibly corrupt, and I think most sane countries at this point want nothing to do with the Olympics, and I think more specifically the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, who's essentially about money. All they are is about the money at this point. It's not about the competition. It's not about the athletes. It's about the money. And they're going to hold Olympics in some horrific places that really shouldn't have the Olympics or shouldn't go back. They shouldn't be in China this soon. They were just there for the Summer Olympics a couple Olympics ago, for Christ's sake. And then here they are in Beijing, that well-known mecca of winter sports, Beijing, so I don't know. This is where I miss the days of when the Olympics were in places like Lake Placid. We're not going to see those days again because of money. And I really wonder if we'll even see the Olympics in the States again, because I don't see cities and states willing to put out the money that the IOC asks for, because they want all new facilities for the most part. So you end up in places like China, who are more than willing to spend money on building all new facilities for essentially one use, which would never happen here in the States, at least not anymore. So between the IOC and China and NBC and the money and all the crap that goes around with it, my jerk of the week, or the next couple of weeks, will be the Olympics. Nothing against the athletes involved. But Everything around the Olympics other than the athletes, I think, sucks. And we see that every night on television. That's my jerk of the week. All right, let's get the hell out of here, Greg. So if you get out the thank yous and the what fors and all that cool stuff.
Sure. Read me on my WordPress Out of Bounds blog pretty much every Monday. And my most recent piece was about the ill-fated Andre Ware experiment, as the Lions still try to
ill-fated indeed.
Still try to get their quarterback situation together. So do that. Please follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. Want to thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this stuff, and thank you, Big Al, for making Tuesday night so gosh darn fun.
Okay, one question before I wrap things up. How did Bean handle the big snow?
He likes to go out by it. Like if I've got it shoveled and he's got a path, he likes to go out but he's definitely afraid of going in it. Like actually, trying to walk through it,
right.
or he's okay if it's around him.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to go in it.
In the snow.
You can almost see like a force field, like those invisible fences.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like an invisible fence. He just won't. He won't do it. He won't do it. But I think it's because he's got these tiny little legs, and he's probably afraid that if he goes in, he won't get out.
You got one smart dog there, I think. He knows, hey, I'm not going in that crap. So, good boy, Bean. Yeah. All right, with that, I just want to give a shout-out to Greg for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk sports with me. As always, I'll give a shout-out to Linda, who is working in the ER tonight. She's back from vacation. We spent the last week up north, had a hell of a time. Unfortunately, she's walked back. She's waded back into the ER for the first time in like 10 days tonight. And I give her all the credit in the world for doing so. And thank you to the listeners as well. And if you want to listen, as always, you can find us at the usual places, such as Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public, thekneejerks.net, which is the homepage, which will have the MP3 show notes and links. Essentially, any place podcasts are found and aggregated, just do a search for The Knee Jerks or Eno and Big Al or some combination thereof. You can find the podcast. Please subscribe. Please comment. Please like. And, I just hope you enjoy the show because Greg and I enjoy doing it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this for like the 200 years we have been doing this. So, yeah. Well, not 200. I think it's been more like 25, but I've lost track at this point, Greg, because I'm old and decrepit. So I was a young man when we started, as I always said. All right, now we got to get out of here, though, because I'm sure Greg's got a hot toddy waiting for him, or maybe a cold scotch. I don't know which. So until 2 weeks from now, when I'm sure we'll have be able to talk about the Super Bowl, we'll have to talk about Matthew Stafford then. We'll also, I'm sure, have the Pistons trade deadline, and maybe there will be a breakthrough in Major League Baseball's labor talks. We shall see. But until then, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.